The room was never locked, never hidden, and never marked dangerous, yet everyone who entered it alone eventually vanished, not settling them. It was an unused conference room on the third floor, beige walls, dim lighting, nothing remarkable except employees avoided being inside it for too long without ever agreeing why. People said the room felt unfinished, like a sentence trailing off, and staying there too long created an urge to leave, not fear but sense of overstaying something's patience. The first person to vanish was a temp worker who stayed late, alone, answering emails at a room, and weeks later struggled to recall his face despite remembering his tasks. Payroll records showed his name, but no photo existed, no emergency contact, no digital footprint beyond entries that felt copied rather than created. Investigators eventually noticed a pattern. The room didn't remove bodies, it removed relevance, slowly detaching a person from memory, documentation, and emotional weight. People stopped talking about the vanished not because they chose to, but because nothing surfaced when they tried, as if the mind slid past an empty space. Those who sat in the room reported time behaving incorrectly, minutes compressing, leaving behind the unsettling feeling of having already left. One employee filmed himself inside as a test, only to discover the footage showed him entering, sitting, then standing up and leaving, with hours missing in between. Behind a removable panel, someone found writing scratched deeply into the wall, repeating the same sentence, as if carved over many visits across different years. The sentence read, "This room finishes what people abandon," written again and again, growing more distorted with each repetition. A theorist suggested the room responded to unresolved identity, people unsure who they're becoming, using hesitation as fuel, dissolving those who stayed undecided too long. The room didn't judge morality, only permanence, allowing people with firm purpose to leave unchanged, while erasing those still half-formed. A senior employee volunteered to sit inside overnight, confident in a limb behind instructions, letters, and recordings, convinced the room only targeted the uncertain. The next morning, his office remained intact, his belongings untouched, but coworkers remembered only that someone important used to work there, without agreeing who that was. The room was sealed permanently, yet reports persist of similar spaces appearing elsewhere, unremarkable rooms where people linger too long and slowly become unnecessary. After the room was sealed, employees expected relief, but instead noticed something worse. The apps remained active, like a vacuum continuing to pull relevance from nearby spaces. Meetings held near the sealed room ended abruptly, ideas forgotten mid-sentence, and people leaving unsure why they'd entered the building at all. Soon the effects spread beyond the room itself, affecting adjacent offices, hallways, as if the building had learned how to remove people more efficiently. Security noticed something subtle on cameras. People walking past the third floor began slowing unconsciously, pausing, checking their phones, then continuing without remembering why they stopped. Some employees described near misses, moments where their names slipped from conversations, emails went unanswered, and colleagues spoke over them as if they weren't fully present. Those people reported intense fatigue afterward, not physical exhaustion, but the draining sensation of nearly being finished without permission. Weeks later, new writing appeared on the wall inside the sealed room despite no entry, adding a second sentence beneath the first, carved deeper, slower, more deliberate. The new sentence read, "Completion does not require consent," unsettling investigators who realized the room wasn't responding anymore, it was continuing autonomously. An internal archive was created to document disappearances and memory degradation, but even the archive itself began losing entries without any record of deletion. Files corrupted selectively, removing emotional context first, then names, leaving behind spreadsheets that implied people once existed without explaining who they were. Months later, a similar room was reported in other cities, same dimensions, same lighting, same feeling of impatience, appearing suddenly in a building with no renovation history. Investigators realized the room wasn't unique, it was reproducible, emerging wherever indecision accumulated long enough to justify removal. The pattern showed the room's form-drift environments where people delayed identity, postponed decisions, and waited to be told who they were. The room didn't create uncertainty, it harvested, condensing hesitation until identity became optional. One man chose to remain inside deliberately, journaling his thoughts as they slowed, noting how his memories became summaries, then bullet points, then single sentences. His final entry read, "I understand now, it doesn't erase you, it simplifies you until nothing remains worth remembering." After his disappearance, coworkers described sudden clarity, projects finished easily, conversations cleaner, as if removing him resolved something none of them could name. Guilt followed later, when they realized efficiency had replaced empathy without asking. The final theory suggested the rooms were a natural correction, appearing when societies valued speed over meaning, trimming unresolved people the way systems remove inefficiencies. Not punishment, not malice, simply optimization, quiet, emotionless, and irreversible. Employees began avoiding hesitation altogether, making faster decisions, finishing conversations abruptly, believing certainty might protect them. This didn't stop the room, it accelerated because rushed choices produced hollow identities, people acting complete while remaining internally unresolved. Management introduced constant motion as policy, shorter meetings, continuous restructuring, assuming speed would prevent stagnation, unaware they were feeding the very conditions that summoned the rooms. The more motion increased, the more people disappeared socially before vanishing physically, their presence thinning weeks ahead of any official loss. A small group appeared immune, people anchored deeply to purpose, grief, or belief, individuals who finished emotional process completely. The rooms ignored them entirely, as if certainty, not confidence, rendered someone unremovable. Audio recordings placed near sealed rooms captured low-frequency patterns matching human indecision, like breath held too long before choosing. When people nearby resolved personal conflicts, the recordings flattened, suggesting the room reacted to psychological closure rather than physical presence. One reported room collapsed unexpectedly, losing its effect entirely after a community gathered inside and openly confronted unresolved grief without distraction or interruption. Witnesses described the space feeling suddenly ordinary, stale even, as if whatever had been feeding there found nothing left to consume. Such outcomes were rare because most people refused prolonged discomfort, preferring avoidance or distraction rather than sitting fully inside unresolved emotional states. The rooms endured not through force, but through patience, waiting quietly for avoidance to return. Reports emerged of non-physical rooms, online spaces where people lingered indecisively, comment sections, group chats, abandoned draft. Accounts vanished digitally first, usernames fading, histories thinning, until nobody remembered who once participated. The final adaptation was subtle. People stopped noticing disappearances altogether, because the room no longer needed isolation, it operated within everyday hesitation. Some individuals only realized what was happening when conversations no longer required their input, and their absence felt strangely appropriate. They weren't removed instantly, just gradually deprioritized, like background elements fading in an image edited for clarity. Researchers began attempting to measure presence itself, tracking how often a person's name surfaced organically in disc outcomes. Those whose names declined below a certain threshold became statistically vulnerable to room formation. Families reported narrative disintegration first, stories losing a central character, memories rearranging themselves without obvious grief attached. The terrifying part wasn't forgetting someone entirely, but remembering them as less important than they truly were. Walls were only the earliest manifestation, a simple structure for a far more adaptive process. A small movement formed around deliberate completion, encouraging people to finish conversations, grieve fully, decide honestly, and refuse indefinite postponement. Where this practice spread, reported room activity decreased significantly, though never completely. Experts warned the phenomenon could never vanish entirely, because hesitation is human, and unfinished thoughts accumulate naturally. The rooms were not errors, they were consequences. Some listeners of this file reported discomfort midway through, noticing how often they delay decisions, postpone identity, or remain where they no longer belong. That awareness alone may be enough to prevent formation, but only if followed by action. If you're still listening, ask yourself one quiet question. What in your life remains unfinished long enough to justify removal? Because the room does not chase people, it waits patiently for them to stop finishing themselves.